Hey everybody, I'm Jay Scherr with Jay Scherr Business Consulting. We help entrepreneurs, business owners, and other leaders maximize their potential, build rock-solid foundations for their businesses, and create more freedom in their lives. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. Jack Welch said, "The world belongs to passionate, driven people." On today's episode, we're going to explore the psychology of driven individuals, addiction, shame, and self-sabotage, a meditation practice that allows you to gain clarity, confidence, and power, and more. My guest is a father, a licensed psychologist, author, entrepreneur, and podcast host who specializes in helping highly driven people master their gifts and take back control of their lives. He works with top-performing entrepreneurs, athletes, CEOs, and others. He was a high school dropout who overcame drug addiction and homelessness, turned his life around, and went on to earn dual PhDs in industrial and organizational psychology and clinical psychology. Throughout his career, he's developed an expertise in the application of mindfulness, of which he's a 20-plus year practitioner, self-psychology theory, and neuroscience. He's a self-described functional MRI geek and a student of all spiritual practices and religions. Please welcome the man who's helping all of us harness our genetic gifts in order to lead powerful lives, Dr. Doug Brackmann. Doug, it is so great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Jay. This is fantastic. Quite the intro, man. You did your homework.
I try to. I want to make sure that I'm doing my due diligence and prepared to be able to create the best experience for not only you as a guest, but obviously for all of those that are watching and listening right now. And I got to tell you, researching you and looking at your content, listening to your own podcast, it really has been an eye-opener for me. Your story is truly an amazing one. You live it every day, but I'm really looking forward to diving deep with you today. So let's go right into it. I thought a good starting point would be for you to share with all of us what your favorite thing is about yourself and why that particular thing.
Ooh. I will call it an insatiable curiosity. I mean, I have got a curiosity that does not quit. I mean, and curiosity is it's rocket fuel for me. I mean, really, just diving deep into anything. They accuse me of having a very addictive personality, and this addiction to deeper understanding and learning. And I think that's really the core of it. And second to that is my stubbornness.
That's a great combination, curiosity and stubbornness.
It both can be an asset and a curse, but
absolutely,
turned in the right direction. Curiosity around how high you can get with cocaine almost killed me. So
let's talk about that, because I think it's important. You mentioned that people will say that you have an addictive personality. So addictions come in all shapes and forms, right? I believe that we are all addicted to something, right? We may not admit it. We may not know exactly what it is, but we all have that addiction. So let's talk about your early story, because it really helps to set things up and give some context for where you ultimately go and grow and the type of work that you do today. So I want to frame it this way, and I just want to ask some questions to kind of uncover some of that story. So first of all, your father is a very well-known and highly successful neurosurgeon, and clearly must have been someone who was driven, worked very hard. What was life like for you as in your early years, being around your father And was there an expectation for you and for your siblings in terms of what you were expected to be, how you were expected to show up? Share a little bit of that with us.
Fantastic questions. Boy, you did do your homework. Yes, typical shame-based family system or addictive family system is what I come from. And so, meaning that there's this expectation put upon you of performance. And if you don't perform, you are less than. And so in that comes as an alcoholic family system and a lot of research around that and the typical roles kids fall into. And so you have a mom or a dad, dad is the addict. My father is a profound workaholic. Dear friend, we have reconciled amazing in particularly the last 5 years, but, he has 6,700 publications. So, I mean, he was the youngest of 5, piss poor depression era kid, come from nothing. And this ultra performance, this combined with, what I come to be an expert in now is this underlying feeling that there's something missing or wrong. And the genetics behind that, and we'll get into that, I'm sure, in this show, but that families that are centered around this inner world where there's, just not enough. You have often parents, one that, is a hyper overachiever, and then you have one that is a people pleaser, always trying to keep dad happy. Mm. Then you have the sons, one older and 2 younger brothers, 4 of us, and we're all within, 2.5 years of age. We were nuts. But my older brother was the hero. He followed the script, and he was, straight A student and blah, 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 blah. And then often you have the scapegoat, someone in the family system that is the cause of all the problems. And if only you had your shit together, then the rest of us could be, together. And then you have typically the lost kid, somebody who's kind of just avoiding and, hiding in the shadows. Then you have the youngest, which is the mascot is what it's called. But it is the comedian, the one who breaks the tension. And I was the scapegoat. And so I had this, wiring that makes us different. And, 3, 5, 7% of the population that have our brain structure and our neurochemistry and our reward system. I always felt like I was different, and I, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, looking around the class, not understanding why everyone else didn't see how stupid it was. What a waste of time it is to memorize all this spelling crap. How is this going to help me? And it didn't make sense why they didn't see the world that I did. And we were well-traveled as kids. My father was very successful. And we wound up going in 1980 or 81 to London on a vacation. And it was Piccadilly. We went to Piccadilly, went to Trafalgar Square, and it was right after Sid Vicious of the Sex Pistols died. And I saw all the punk rockers, and I was 12 years old, 13 years old. And I said, Clash I jumped right in. And I was in Los Angeles in the early 80s. And so I just became a hardcore. I had a mohawk and piercings and earrings and the whole thing, and drove my father absolutely insane. But it was this internal demand that he see me. Like, no, you will see the real me. I'm not going to put on this mask of ultra performance, and so
well, let me ask you one question to that point though before you continue on. So first, in terms of the exposure to the punk rock movement and just being really pulled into that world, was it truly a means of being noticed and rebellion? Or was it also that I just love the music and love the lifestyle and these people in this community accepted me and I felt like I belonged?
The misfits. We were the outcasts. We were, in all these punk band names. And it spoke to me. The music really spoke to me of just, and we have as drivens, I don't know, I'll keep using that as a understanding, just the way I conceptualize it. We have an issue with authority, and combined with this way our brain works, we're human bullshit detectors. We see through hypocrisy so quickly and so easily. And that's, the hypocrisy of the school system. Like, why doesn't everybody see what a joke this is? Where I did, and most people don't. And so the punk rock movement was really about, taking a stand against the hypocrisy of living in a society that was just not being authentic. And so, we're all individuals, trying to look the same punk rock model, but it did speak to me in a lot of ways. Unfortunately, crosstop, the speed and the Old English 800, malt liquor and drinking, that went along with it. I do have the underlying genetics that just, man, it was like a starting pistol from the first time I tasted alcohol to, the day I went into a locked psych ward. It was like a starting pistol because it took away that achy, impending doomy feeling that I seem to always have. And so it soothed the inner monster. And so, as they always say, that alcohol is a solution to a living problem. It's not actually the problem. And so it suited me well, just so to speak. And so by the time I was 18, well, from somewhere in around Christmas, it was, I remember it vividly. It was right after Richard Pryor burned himself. Remember the old joke of Richard Pryor running down the street, the match lit?
Yes.
And that was ether-based cocaine. And so what he was doing, he was freebasing. Yeah. So freebasing is not the baking soda way of freeing the cocaine from the hydrochloride, which is the base. And so you wind up with pure cocaine and you can only smoke it. We used ether. So you have liquid ether and you take a 8-ball and you put it in. From the first time I smoked it to a locked psych ward was 4 months. I mean, I couldn't, and it was the first time, and it was a very good experience for me to really experience true addiction where you can't stop. And
now, Doug, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but was that a personal choice to go into the psych ward, or was this God, you want to hear the whole story? So I was seeing this poor young 32-year-old psychologist at the time as a condition that my parents would still pay for the car I was living in. I was living in a 1972 Chevy family wagon, and my dad was continuing to pay the insurance and said, all right, you can live in the car, but you can't be here. And I was nuts. Under that condition, I was seeing this, and I walked into his office and said, dude, I need to go to rehab or I'm going to die. And he went, what? And I went, I am 138 pounds. I'm 190 now or 185 now. I was 50 pounds lighter, same height, and just a skeleton. And he didn't know it. And I was like, I'm a bullshitter. I can bullshit the best of them. And so he looked at me and just went, oh. And so he didn't know what the hell to do with me. So I went into a mental institution, basically. And this was, early 1986. And so it was before the big wave of, all the rehabs and everything. It was just the beginning of that. Okay.
And so I didn't go into rehab. I went into a locked psych ward. He didn't know what to do with me. And it was, 11 days later, I went to my first 12-step meeting and I went, oh, that's what I am. And so that was April of 1986, and I've been sober since.
Amazing.
But it's minus some, experimentation with medicine work, which has been profound experience, but I've been years away from that again. But it was foundational in my understanding. And, I was a high school dropout and very quickly was delivering auto parts or something, some miserable job. And went back home and said, I'm getting my life together, and figured out pretty quick that it sucked to deliver auto parts. And so I went back to school and finished high school in a couple of months, and then just did my undergrad in 3.5 years. I just was like, I hated school, despised school. And so it was a means to an end. I knew I wanted to be I went in as pre-med and was seeing a psychologist at the time. for the first time in my life, I went into a real psychologist, and I was 21 years old, and he, guy named Neil Clark Warren, and
I know that
you know the
name.
name. Yeah, and he was not the Neil Clark Warren back then. He started a little company called eHarmony.
Oh, okay.
And so
Now I can see him.
entrepreneurial, I mean, and he got me. He was one of us. He was an entrepreneur, and he was just a hell of a guy. But he gave me homework that woke me up to the real potential of psychology. And at the time, I would, went through Pasadena City College and did my associate's degree literally in 18 months. Then got into USC, and I was in pre-med, hating organic chemistry, dating this ridiculously beautiful 19-year-old who was having, just friend lunches with her ex-boyfriend kind of crap, driving me insane. And he gave me homework, and at the same time I was in Psych 100, and we had a guest lecturer, a guy named Phil Zimbardo from
Oh,
Stanford,
yeah.
Stanford Prison Studies. And he was old as
Yes.
shit, and he was talking, and I just in love with it. Like, wow, and between Neil's influence on me and that, I switched degrees and I never looked back. I said, this is
Amazing.
just me.
So I want to mention two things real quick to all of you that are watching and listening right now. First of all, this is really an incredible story, but do yourself a favor if you have not already researched and studied what Doug is talking about right now, that prison experiment that was done at Stanford. It's mind blowing. It is truly mind blowing. So definitely check that out. You'll find YouTube videos, but take a look at that. It's really interesting what the human mind will do, what we will do, how far we will go, right? And then the other thing is in terms of the homework that Neil gave you, right? Because you had two really cataclysmic moments here. What was the homework that he gave you? What was it specifically that just said to
So
you,
very
whoa,
specifically, it led, so talk about influential moments in my life. It led into my doctoral dissertation, to tell you the truth. It led into
really?
the research I'm doing now.
Okay.
So it, I am kicking ass at USC, getting straight A's, trying to get into grad school, doing really well in most areas of my life, but still beating the crap out of myself. Had this inner dialogue of just, I'm not good enough. And no matter how, and he said, pick something in your world that is relatively easy to do that you're putting off and you feel bad about. And so this was it was probably 89, 88. And it was a Blockbuster video sitting on my coffee table 5 days late. Every time I looked at the damn video, it's like, man, you got to return it. But here's this box of organic chemistry crap that I got to memorize, and I'm more important things to do. But I heard my inner dialogue talking me out of doing something I know I needed to. And so made the commitment. All right, I will return the video before I come back a week later. And so what did I do? I promptly went home and wedged that thing in the door. So I literally couldn't open the door without taking it out. And next morning, oh yeah, all right, Blockbuster. What did I do? I threw it on my front seat of my car. And every time I got in the damn car, yeah, I'll do it, but do it later, keep putting it off. The night before is a Wednesday night. Had my appointments on Thursday. Wednesday night, I set this in the middle of my steering wheel. So literally Wednesday night when I got Thursday morning, it's like, I got to return this. I'm not going to walk into this guy's office without returning it. And I'm hearing that inner dialogue. I vividly remember it, burned into my memory, that if I miss the next light, it's more important that I make it to school. And that's actually God's will telling me not to return the video. And I said,
wow.
I think I'm crazy.
We'll convince ourselves of anything, right?
Anything. And the magic happened when I finally get in the Blockbuster parking lot. I park and I run this thing into the slot. And it vividly, just still can hear my head say it, is, what did my head tell me when I finally returned the video? And it was this statement that, look how hard it was for you to just return a stupid video. You're never going to amount to anything.
Whoa.
And I laughed. But I laughed. And that laughter at myself, and that became this thing that I have investigated my entire career. And who's the one laughing at the self? And what is insight? What is this person that is observing? Who is this one listening? And, and the mind, body, soul, argument's been going on since man could talk. But that soul level awareness of that's the one laughing at me.
Wow. So had you already been...
That moment of freedom, that was right then, and that is when I changed my degree. I literally changed my degree the next day.
That is incredible. Thank you very much, Blockbuster Video.
Yeah, exactly.
So had you already been either studying or immersed in any type of religious practice leading up to this particular moment?
I've got... interesting, my father's mother's side is German Jew.
Okay.
And then they became Missouri Synod Lutherans when they came here when they came and immigrated in, because it was the entire, it wasn't very popular to be Jewish in the 20s and the 30s. Mm-hmm. And so it was we are not that, we are this. And it was a horrifically judgmental, just, a perfectionistic kind of list of rules you had to follow. And I hated it. I despised it, and went to, was forced to go when we were kids. And then, eventually by the time the punk rock thing came, I was just like, you couldn't drag me in there. But I'm also an intuitive feeler. Myers-Briggs, I'm an INFJ.
Okay.
And so, which makes this, it's the rarest of the Jungian personality types, and we're naturally drawn into the mystery of the mystic. And so this soul awareness, this capacity to actually observe and see things from 19 different directions, and see through hypocrisy, that curiosity around what is the soul has been with me since I was a little kid.
Well, it's so interesting that in this moment, right, you're asking yourself different questions, right? You start to realize that this voice, right, where is this voice me, right? Is it separate from me? You start to really think about the mind and the mind-body connection. And I remember, for me personally, when I first started to explore that one particular area, not only did I go down the path of psychology, but I was also at the same time studying Buddhism.
Yep.
Because I just found it so incredibly fascinating, and it really helped me to gain some grounding and some clarity on some of those questions that I was asking, which was why I was asking about the spirituality piece or the religion piece, if that had been something meaningful for you in your life up to that point, or did you start to explore different spiritual paths from that point moving forward?
The 12-step program, that it's part of that. And so, as I often joke now, I developed a hate for religion as strong as Jesus. So Jesus hated religion too. But the hypocrisy of religious practices, and that's the other joke about spirituality versus religion. Religion is for people that are scared of going to hell. Spirituality is for people that have been to hell, and that I have been to hell and back many a time, and actually now with the practices. But it's and Buddhism, I was naturally drawn into Buddhism, and by circumstance, my doctoral dissertation chair. So I entered grad school in 91. And at the time I entered grad school, they had just started to really crack the human genome, and Time magazine article came out about, we found the alcoholism gene, and That was the dopamine receptor number 2, DRD2-A1 allele gene. And I found the art, it's like, wow. And so that entered it. And then my doctoral dissertation chair turned out to be a student of Joshu Sasaki, which is a very famous guy who was at the Simmer Zen Center in Los Angeles. And my doctoral dissertation's roommate was a guy named Peter Levine. And Peter Levine is a very famous trauma healer. And so I got into that really early world about, mind, body, and as I joke, the thing between your ears is the brain. This whole thing that you're writing in is the mind. And so we talk about mindset. It's not something in your head. It's something that your whole body and brain are actually working as one. And so but as Shinru Suzuki says, to study Buddhism is to study the self. And,
Absolutely.
That who's looking in at what is, the subject and object of that question that, Neil pushed me towards and helped me have that first insight too. It's an insatiable. I mean, it is in the freedom that you feel of really changing your identity. And that is what I do as a psychologist, is I teach people, rather than who they are. This question of who is impossible to answer. It's really the way to answer it is what. It's what I am.
I love that, and I can see where what you mentioned at the very beginning of the conversation about that insatiable curiosity and that stubbornness a little bit, how that really helps you and provides the fuel to keep going deeper and deeper and asking better questions and really exploring these areas as deeply as you can. I'm curious at this stage in life, because you had also mentioned that you reconciled with your father about 5 years ago, let's say. So at this stage, did your father and mother, but did your father understand more about who you were, what was going on in your mind?
Great, man. You're going to get it all. So going back to the original family system design of alcoholic family systems, I quickly became the hero of the family.
Oh, so you
And
changed
so I changed from the scapegoat into this
to the
hero, and I
hero.
was getting my,
Interesting.
and all of a sudden psychology and, all of this, let's talk about feelings, and became the new family norm. And my brothers were pissed. I mean, they were so pissed. My younger brothers in particular were, because I opened my parents' eyes to, the potential for drug use and alcohol use. And my brothers were just like, damn you. And so they were both, both my younger brothers are in recovery too. And they have, 30 plus years, like, God, we're 35 years now, all of us. And it shook the family to the core. Okay. And it took about 10 years to really kind of reorganize and reshuffle it back into semblance. But it's my older brother and younger brother and myself are really close. I mean, they're my best friends now. And my father is, his intensity, then the drivenness, after writing the book and really him beginning the insightful process, at 80 years old, we'll say he's 87 now, really helped him, really changed him. I mean, he has learned to slow down, but they took the scalpel out of his hand at 82.
Oh my gosh.
He was the highest operating surgeon in the United States for like 7 years in a row. He'd do 18, 20 surgeries a week.
Oh,
I mean, he
my
was
gosh.
just, yeah, I mean,
So I watched some videos of your dad when I was preparing for our conversation today, and there were some videos of some talks that he had done and some kind of a promo video, if you will, of one of the places where he was associated with, and just a very and he looked like he was probably, I don't know, maybe 80, 82-ish when I saw these videos. Just very articulate, very had definitely had his mind about him, just very
He's
bright and
87 and
responsive.
sharp as a tack. My mother and my father now play bridge probably 3-4 days a week, and they're both. My mom's a double master in bridge. I don't know if you know, but she's a brilliant woman, concert pianist, and put my dad through med school and stay at home mom. But ADHD, I mean, beyond. She is a firecracker too. So I got it on both ends. I mean, I was. And all of my brothers have this same constellation of brain structure. We're all hyper successful.
That's so incredible. So I want to take a couple of moments to talk about the psychology of driven people, because you've spent a inordinate amount of time on this subject, really analyzing, studying the psychological, biological side of this, and really the deep science. So just, if you would, share with our audience a bit about the brain structure and what that psychology of driven people looks like. And let's do it in a way that, we're speaking to a wide-ranging audience, that keep it general, yet something that they can take away and say, oh, that sounds like me.
So I promise you no brain parts. You put the normal in a functional MRI, and the normal brain has something called an executive function. So little left ball of energy right in the left prefrontal. And what the executive function does, it is a tuner outer. It is a focuser. So it keeps most information out of your awareness. And so attention deficit is a misnomer, meaning that, if we don't have a attention deficit, we have an attention, we take in way more information than most. So you put us in a functional MRI, we have the back of our heads light up. And so we actually have a occipital dominance, meaning that there's a brain part or brain structure, but we use our eyeballs to go through the world. And we have something called hypofrontality, meaning our frontal lobes, there's varied activity all the way across the frontal lobe. And the latest research that's writing driven, we have the software system running in our head, it's called the default modal network, is running 3 times as fast, connecting 4 times as many brain parts as the normal brain. Wow. And so we are literally operating in we have same brain parts are all there, but the operating system behind it, where most people are running, DOS 2.0, we're running, IS 37. I mean, it's literally, and, one of the early researchers that I followed, Tom Hartman, first conceptualized the hunter-farmer theory, that most people adapted to the human, the agricultural revolution. And so, the world became a much slower, safer, predictable place. And so they needed this frontal lobe, which is a logical, linear, you put your finger in the ground, you plant corn, and you patiently wait. But these resilient genetics that we have, and he theorized that we are the aberrant part of every single species of, bacteria even, have a small percent that are highly adaptable to a rapidly changing environment. And so we are the part of the human species waiting for the next ice age or waiting for this meteorite to hit. And we are the ones that are going to survive. And so it's a natural. And on top of that, the human genome is also very adaptable over generations to your environment. And so this transgenerational trauma, Peter Levine's influence over me over the last 30 years has been profound. And I could have called the book, the trauma-based personality type. We are designed to live in much more chaotic, traumatizing worlds. And so the psychology of that is where it gets this is what really lights my candle, because what I do. We, as Drivens, go into a psychologist's office that have a a executive functioning exec, we look nuts. I mean, we are bouncing all over the walls. We're running circles around them. We can't believe they're operating so slow. But their identity, as we went from agricultural, into these massive societies, the identity became simpler and simpler based upon that, that frontal lobe of executive function. They became butchers and bakers and candlestick makers. Their identity was very much affirmed by the way their brain works. And so it's a very simple identity. And that you want to make a driven person go crazy, ask them to try to figure out who they are. Because we're Da Vinci's, we're all over the map. We're artists and painters and, militaries and so, who am I as a byproduct of that? And the other thing that we vary on typically, and there are differences in this, but most of us have a difference in the dopamine reward system. And dopamine receptor number 2, one of the genetics I mentioned earlier, is the boredom gene. And, you think about a farmer, they are tolerant of incredibly boring worlds. I mean, they literally watch stuff grow. And they save their crops for, and they're resistant to change, they're risk adverse. Where we have these genetics and, we wonder, we cannot sit still, which is a huge advantage in a world where sitting still will get you killed. And, but this feeling of boredom is what? It's this kind of achy, something missing, something wrong feeling. Another interesting genetic that most of us have some degree of too is the dopamine receptor number 4, which is the wandering gene. It's the FOMO gene. It's the shiny object gene. So it is, if you're a hunter and it feels like there's more woolly mammoths over the next hill. A great time, National Geographic did an expose on it. It's the wandering gene. And so these are the explorers. We are the ones who are always thinking, shiny shit on the horizon. And it's that genetic that feels like the grass is greener over there. And so these combinations of things turn into this personality type that, and I'm not a fan of the APA or really how they give everything a disordered label, because it doesn't give an explanation. All it does is give you a list of damn symptoms. And if you got the symptoms, you got the disorder. It doesn't give you the underlying issues with it or the underlying causes, which is what I'm hoping to give more insight to. But you look at our identities, and identity is formed by something that is most consistent in your world. And if it's I'm a cobbler and I'm making shoes and this is what I do and I go in and make that is a executive function way of really creating an identity as a cobbler. We don't have that executive function. And, we're not only a cobbler, but we're also, we do 19 other things at the same time. But what is the most consistent thing in our worlds? It's this feeling of not enough. It's this deeper underlying achy, maybe, and that where the imposter syndrome riddles, the entrepreneurial world and me, having 2 PhDs is ridiculous amount of education. It's stupid. It really is. And I can thank my 2nd grade teacher for, really questioning my ability to spell. And I proved her wrong, trying to get rid of this feeling that I wasn't enough. And, as Jim, Dr. Spira, shook my hand and said, "Congratulations, Dr. Brackmann," my inner world said, "Haha, he bought it." Because it was still that feeling. Yeah, that feeling didn't go away.
So you didn't arrive at that point.
There is no finish line to it. And so that the shift of identity is, from a who is this feeling based kind of wishy-washy, not to a what, is very simple. What you are is a monkey. You're a Homo sapien. You are an animal. Period. Full stop. And more importantly, if you can really start to discern the typical self that is made between your emotions and your thoughts from the one who's observing it. Carl Jung said that the one who is, the ego The fear-based ego is really this lowercase self, which is the thinking and the feeling sense of identity. And it's ridiculous because it's not real. It's a confabulation of all your experiences and all your beliefs and all of your, and it's changeable and it's not fixed and it's just a bunch of crap. But the one who's observing it, or your soul, and he called that a capital S self, your soul-based self. And you're stuck in this meat suit and you have these wirings and these programs and traumas, but they can be changed. And you're not fixed, and you can eat your own shadow, as we say in Zen practice, but you can change the reactions you're having. But it takes that curious observer as the real you.
So let's talk then about the meditation practice, because you've been a long time practitioner here, because I want to explore that a bit, because you practice a very specific type of meditation today. Share with us a bit about that, and how does that help one be able to connect more with themselves and find clarity, power, confidence, etc.?
And so it's, again, universe. By chance, I landed in Jim Spira's office, which he was a practitioner of Joshu Sasaki, which is a sect of Zen coming out of Japan. He was the last ordained Zen master prior to World War II. They came out and very famous. He not recently, I guess 8 years ago, died at 108 years old or whatever. Those guys live forever. But there's two sects of Zen in Japan. There's Soto Zen, S-O-T-O Zen, and that is based upon the rice farmers. It's very patient and very, very slow moving, and it takes a long time, and it's very, if you think about a farmer's world, and interesting, about 8%, or a little bit, much rarer, is the Rinzai. And Rinzai is the warrior, samurai, driven. I mean, it's really designed for us, and it is a much more austere practice, much more direct practice, and much more contained practice. And so I wound up Joshu's number 2, a guy named Sandy Stewart, Gentai, turned in. He is still my Zen teacher. He's 87. He's my dad's age, 87 years old. I still frequent him. He no longer teaches in Zen retreat, but you do these Zen retreats that are, it's literally Japanese prison camp. It is the hardest thing you can ever do. And it is the exact same day, starting at 4:30 in the morning and ending at 9:30 at night, day after day after day after day after day. Just no
on
decisions.
A pillow, meditating?
It is a incredibly highly structured, with its formal Zen tea ceremony to open the day. And then you chant, and then you have another little 10-minute break, and then you have a formal breakfast, and then you go into formal meditation, and then all the meditations is a sitting, walking meditation, but it's just very structured. And what the ego, or the lowercase self, likes to do is make decisions. It wants to be in control. It wants to be making, all these little micro decisions, making your day better all day long. And so all of that is taken away from you. And so you are just, and this inner world, of just misery and suffering comes up, and there's no logical or rational reason to have all of your decisions are made. The food is wonderful. All you're doing is sitting around doing basically meditating, focusing on the present all day. There's no reason this should be hard. And so it's an opportunity to really, and as I come to discover with all the years of training, the trauma healing components of it are just remarkable. And what happens is very simply the body. So when does trauma come out of the body? Trauma comes up when you're in a circumstance of safety. And, when do guys who are in combat freak out? It's when they come home, when you're safe. And so And the key to that is when you're actually in a circumstance of safety, not feeling safe. Safety is not a feeling. And so when you know, and that's something I call the soul, or this observer, is your knower. I know it in my knower everything is okay. I know it in my knower that everything is, there's nothing wrong here, but my body is a twisted knot. and if you can just sit and accept the twisted knot, and that's one of my teachers in trauma land, he says the body is 100 million-year-old healing machine. And if you just get out of its way, it knows how to heal all of this stuff. But getting out of its way is the trick. And how do you get out of your ways? You sit with curiosity and just observe.
So how does this change the brain? How does this meditative practice actually change or rewire the brain itself?
It is such a cool time to be a psychologist because it's, well, the hippies are right. Trauma is held in the body. And again, going back to the foundations of what I teach, what's between the ears used to be theorized as a control mechanism. The thing that's really in charge of us is the brain. In the last 7 years, 10 years of really the functional MRI getting to the point of now really seeing what it is, it's really a relay station that's integrating a lot of the different parts below the brain. And so as I teach it, this thing between the ears is the brain. The entire body and central nervous system is the mind. And so you touch a hot stove, every single cell in that nerve pathway from the tip of your finger to your spine, there's nerve memory, DNA, little ticks in the DNA. It hits the spine, and the spine sends back an impulse to contract muscles. All of the muscles remember that. And so this unconscious, where's the unconscious? The unconscious is this thing that you're living in, is your body. And all of these stored unconscious reactions, reflexes, are not permanent. They're not fixed. And so if you sit with them and you sit with horrible experiences, on a DNA level, the reactivity you have in your body actually winds itself out. Wow. It is incredible. And so what used to bother me no longer bothers me. And I have my eldest daughter has it too. I won't even try to pronounce it, but it's actually a genetic thing where I cannot stand the sound of people chewing. It used to just make my skin crawl and it's a reactive. It's a phobia.
You have that, or your daughter has that?
Both. It's a genetic.
Both of you have it.
I gave it to her. Yeah, I didn't teach it to her. I mean, she had it since she was little. It's part of it's actually part of the spectrum thing that we're on. But sitting in Zen retreat, in silent meditation, listening to 25 people chew is literally, eating salads, and it is this huge opportunity to know in my knower, know in my soul that I am safe, yet feeling these incredibly uncomfortable reactions I'm having in my body. But the more curious I am and listening to different, that guy's terrible, but this guy over here is not as bad. And why is that one different than this? It's literally through systematic desensitization. It doesn't bother me at all now. In fact, I find it curious. Wow. And so this, as Carl Jung says, the shadow lives in the body. And it is this thing that, I'm trying to navigate around or, get out of the way of. But if I actually run at my shadow and eat my shadow, literally in that chewing example, it allows for permanent changes in the body, and things that used to bother me. Non-reactivity is a norm for me now. It doesn't, things that, used to just drive me nuts don't.
This is truly fascinating. Now I want you to share something else with our audience, if you will, as we are wrapping up our conversation. I really could talk to you for hours because there's so many things I want to explore with you. But what I would love for you to share, because it speaks to the meditative practice, is you have retreats where you're shooting big guns, right? Long targets. So what I would love for you to do is connect the dots between how, when you're shooting, how that allows the mind to either relax or get into a meditative or flow state. What's happening there?
So it very simply, the gun is one of the greatest teaching tools I've ever come across for teaching the insight around, the discernment between the monkey mind, or this chattering thinking machine, that and the body and the soul. And so how does it do that? Is this wonderful thing called recoil creates this flinch, or this automatic bracing that happens in the body prior to pulling the trigger. And so the body, the body will, you're not thinking about, oh, the gun's going to recoil and therefore I should brace. The body automatically does it. And so there you get to experience, there's this impulse in my body of not being present. And it's not a thought. And so most important part of that is the capacity to actually be with that resistance, going to resisting returning videotapes or resisting returning the email is sabotage. And, if you're resisting and you're flinching, and we shoot, we start at 300 yards and work out to a mile. I'm shooting next week out to a mile with anyone listening that knows guns. I shoot a Chi-Tech, 375 Chi-Tech. It's got a 600 yard or more range than a 50 BMG. It is a ridiculous gun. Hyper accurate. A very fun gun to shoot. But the anticipation of recoil, if you're anticipating recoil and you're braced and you're breathing, at a mile, you'll miss by well over 10 feet. Wow. And so little tiny movements here make big movements there. And so you have to be completely grounded. You're laying completely flat. And the key to this entire thing is there is no resistance in the present moment. There can't be. And so if you generalize that to your life, there is no resistance. There good news, bad news. Good news is you can do anything. Bad news is you have no excuse to not do anything. And so it gives you this capacity to really discern, the mind, the body, and the soul. But, what is flow? What is this flow hack? And, this magical experience when three become one. When your mind is very still and very present, and your body's very still and very present, and your soul is actually the one pulling the trigger. It is this, it's a non-dual for any of their experience. It is a mystical experience of, in your know you're going to hit this target before the bullet goes. You can literally feel the bullet go down the barrel. You anticipate the exact spot on the target where it's going to hit, and it hits there. And it takes, at a mile, it takes about 2.25 seconds for the bullet to get there, and almost 6.5 seconds for the sound to come back. And we shoot these big steel targets. But in that moment that you see the impact, there's this delay. And that's enough for the three to split back into their parts. And all of a sudden your monkey mind goes, I know I hit that, but I don't think I did. Maybe I did. And then the sound hits you. And when that sound hits you, I've watched most people cry. It's an experience of absolute presence. One of my favorite names for God is presence, where you are experiencing all of it becoming, you are connected to everything and everything is connected to you. And yet you're still you at the same time. So it's a remarkable experience. It is. And it generalizes to everything. If you turn everything into a meditation practice, and I get all my coaching clients, all of them get egg timers, and they're turning all their horrible tasks, into 20-minute meditations, and they can do anything for 20 minutes. And if you're present to it, the resistance just goes away. And as the Japanese have proven, your efficiency goes through the roof. It really does, especially with our driven brains. It harnesses something very powerful in us.
This is truly fascinating. So, for all of you that are watching and listening right now, we're certainly going to provide links to all of Doug's social handles, to his website. You can go to his website to find out more information about these retreats, see what upcoming retreats are available, and how you can participate as well. Also, we're going to provide a link to Doug's book, Driven, which is one that I would highly recommend that you listen to, as well as his podcast, which is a great resource for you as well. So, Doug, as we're wrapping up our conversation, I would love it if you would share with all of us something that you would challenge us to do. So if you had one thing that you would challenge our audience, including me, to do starting today, what would it be?
I would say begin a meditation practice, but meditation is a presenting practice. And it is find something that you do every morning, such as drink a cup of coffee or have a cup of tea or whatever. Coffee is the greatest meditation ever. And it's literally just experiencing the cup of coffee while the timer is going on. A 1-minute meditation is where I start everybody.
Okay.
And your monkey mind will start to chatter, and then you gently come back to the sensations of the warm cup in your hand or the taste of the coffee in your mouth. And just do that every day for a week. And then if you can do it for a week, go to 2 minutes. If you can do that for a week, go to 3 minutes. And if you can do that for a week, somewhere around 2 or 3 days in, it's remarkable how you'll start to experience the resistance to doing it, and you have no idea why. In that moment, you can have that profound, videotape moment where you just wake up to what is in control of me. And if once you feel the resistance and you meet it with curiosity, that's your soul coming online. And when your soul comes online, things get different pretty quick.
That is so good. That is a challenge I'm definitely going to take you up on. I know that many of you that are also listening to this right now are going to do exactly the same thing. So, Doug, here is my final question to you. What is one of the most valuable, unexpected lessons that you've learned from a client of yours? Unexpected lesson.
Great question.
If you can think of one.
I've learned more from my clients than anything else. It is some of my favorite clients, and so Drivens tend to be we're entrepreneurs, we're comedians, and some of my favorite clients are comedians. And laughter is possibly the best way to heal trauma. Ooh. Yeah, and the diaphragm, it's a spontaneous release of tension. And crying, hoo, 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 laughter, ha, 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 very similar reactions in the body. And so laugh more. And that is a practice that I have really tried to, and it's another thing one of my Zen teachers always said, enlightenment means learning how to lighten the fuck up. So
that's brilliant. That is so good. Doug, I want to thank you so very much for joining us today on Business Minds Coffee Chat. Man, what a fantastic conversation. Thank you for allowing us to explore different topics, allowing curiosity to navigate the journey of our interview today. And I just want to thank you and let you know how grateful I am for you spending time with us.
Come get behind a gun. Seriously. I mean, it's quite the experience.
Absolutely. And for all of you, I want to thank you so very much for watching and listening. And I do have a very quick favor. Would you please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts? That helps us expand our reach and attract amazing guests just like Doug to the podcast. And as a matter of fact, while you are doing that, why don't you go right to Doug's podcast, which is called IAmDriven. We're going to provide a link to that in the show notes. Do the same thing. Subscribe to his, rate it, leave a comment as well. I know he would appreciate that. I would appreciate that. And to listen to more episodes, all you you need to do is visit jscherbusinessconsulting.com, click that podcast button, and my friends, until next time, keep learning, keep growing. Make sure you pick up a copy of Driven, and we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care, everybody.